It is the fourth model of the Certain Scientific Railgun collaboration of 2023. It is TKR03 Queen Honey, with the kit of Panic, Level Drain, Confusion, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Carrier, which grants a chance when attacking an enemy to pass a debuff you're inflicted with to them. Now, as another model of the collaboration, Queen Honey makes it incredibly clear that she is powerful in her own right, this time instead focusing on creating as much chaos and discord within the other enemy team more than actually providing any notable damage or offensive buffs. But with that, she is also packing a brand new skill into the game called Panic. Explaining this briefly, when using Panic on a foe, you'll get one of two effects depending on when you attack your target. If you attack a target in their heat phase, you will inflict them with Slip, which, explained briefly, catching a foe in their heat phase will force them to forget what they're doing and begin their cooldown phase from right where you catch them. Really good for turn skipping if you can juggle it. However, if you manage to catch them with Panic in their cooldown phase instead, and you manage to not outrun them, you instead will slap them with Metaforce Seal, which of course negates them from being able to unleash Metaforce nukes or buffs, but of course is still able to charge it and still make use of it on any damage bonuses that require it. Level Drain on the right arm is a skill we have not seen too terribly often, but it can be very nasty in its own right. Just to explain it briefly, upon attacking the target, instead of going after a particular stat or debuff like Melt or Fire or Freeze or whatever, Level Drain instead attacks the metal directly, and instead will debuff their levels entirely by a certain amount. This means that upon attacking them and landing this hit and inflicting the ailment, they actually be less efficient and just a hair slower overall every time it's inflicted on them. So instead of going after the enemy directly and say stalling them or stopping them, this instead makes it harder for them to actually hit you with the same terror and efficiency that they may have had before when the battle began. Confusion on the left arm is also a relatively rare skill, but something that we are seeing more and more commonly. Upon attacking the target, it will inflict them with Confused status. This works in a number of ways. Upon being attacked or until 3 turns pass, they have a chance to attack an enemy with an offense skill, or if it is a support or healing skill, it has a chance for them to apply that buff to the enemy instead of to themselves or to an ally directly. This also means if it is a team-wide buff, such as say guard boost or fight boost, it does grant a chance to pass that buff to say one ally and 2 enemies, or any other combination. Again, this only works until they are attacked or until 3 turns pass, and of course it does wear off after that. Being a very heavy ailment-based fighter that she is, Carrier does tie into this pretty readily depending on the situation. But of course, if she's not fighting anyone that inflicts negative ailments, well, this does kind of fall by the wayside. When it comes to her stats across the board, she is just a little better balanced and not as overly broken as, say, Mikoto Ace is, but still relatively well-rounded in her own right. In terms of armor, she's packing about 3250 for the head, about 3,000 for the right arm and 3050 for the left, and legs at 3,900 means she's not too shabby on the armor, moderately light on those arms, but not too bad either, kind of in that nice little sweet zone you want to sit at. Being an ailment-based fighter, base power is most certainly not her strong suit nor her priority, so you can kindly disregard that and not really worry about it too much. The leg stats are honestly pretty nicely rounded as well, with a base mobility of just over 800 means she will have a very good base speed right from the start. An evade of 1082, almost 1100 means she will be pretty dodgy on her feet and have a pretty easy time dodging or grazing a lot of incoming attacks. A melee resist of almost 1400 is very, very nice, as it does mean she can hold her own up close and personal moderately well and without anything breaking her too quickly. But with a shoot resist of 637, that unfortunately is where she starts falling short, as it does mean that enemy sniper taking pot shots from afar will most certainly take her down faster than what you'd really desire. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I still do have to rate her a pretty solid 6.5 out of 10. Even though she does have a very nasty and potentially dangerous ailment-based skill across the board, being able to inflict confusion, level drain, and both variants of Panic, honestly, on the same target if she times it right, she can make herself an absolute menace. But that does also come with the assumption that the enemy is not packing something like super armor or stat cleanse on there to keep ailments off their tail or something similar. Because the moment stat cleanse comes into play, that makes her essentially harmless in that case, and her very low base power does begin to show more obviously. On top of that, even though Carrier can be a very nasty leg ability if you are slapped with a bunch of ailments at once, that also comes with the assumption that the enemy is using ailments, and that also is ailments that can be held onto you. That means Shock, Thunder, or Freeze, or Freeze Shot, of course, cannot be carried because, well, you're not really moving, but of course, that does also mean you have a chance to if the enemy attacks you while you're in these states. So, putting this simply, Carrier basically means that Queen Honey needs to be inflicted with these set ailments in order to even have a chance at passing them along, which makes it a very selectively niche leg ability that, in certain situations, can be great, but in all other cases, not so much and kind of a wasted slot in my honest opinion. However, as mixed parts though, I do have to easily grade her just a little bit higher at a 7 out of 10. The legs still pack some very nice stats across the board, with the exception of the shoot resist, of course, that I do have to mention again in that case is something to keep in mind. But with everything else, level drain, confusion, panic, all are very useful skills that you can make use of. And even though as a pure set together may not be super great, if you mix the parts up and use them across your team, say, and mix them up, you might be able to make use of them a lot easier.